I want to play again. I want to play again. The game.
Bro, any
Do
day.
something about
Bro,
it.
I will walk outside with you right now. Right now.
And now Strickland's talking to him. Oh my goodness!
Absolutely insane.
Sean Strickland has produced one of the biggest upsets in UFC Championship history.
He got knocked out by Alex Pereira. He went and trained with Alex Pereira.
Unless you've been living under a rock for the past few years, you've probably heard about the rivalry between Alex Pereira and Israel Adesanya. It's one of the most intense and personal rivalries in the history of combat sports. But what you've heard is only part of the story. What most people don't know is that their conflict runs far deeper than just their fights in the UFC. This is a rivalry rooted in personal struggle, identity, and the search for purpose. It's a story of two men from completely different worlds whose paths have crossed again and again in a battle for legacy and redemption. Alex Pereira was born in São Bernardo do Campo, a tough neighborhood in Sao Paulo, Brazil. He grew up in one of the most dangerous areas in the country, where violence, crime, and poverty were part of daily life. Drug dealers ran the streets, and shootouts between gangs and the police were common. Many kids in his neighborhood didn't make it out. Some were killed in gang violence. Others fell into addiction. Alex's own family was directly affected. His older brother died as a result of the crime and violence that plagued their community. By the time he was a teenager, Alex had already dropped out of middle school. He worked as a bricklayer's assistant and later got a job at a tire shop to help support his family. Like many people in his community, Alex turned to alcohol to cope with the harsh reality of life in the favelas. He started drinking at a young age, and before long, it became a problem. He later said that alcohol controlled him and that it was hard to escape. But Alex's life changed when he found fighting. He was 21 years old when he first stepped into a gym to train in kickboxing. That's considered late to start in combat sports, where most fighters begin in their early teens or even earlier. But Alex had something that couldn't be taught: raw power, determination, and a connection to something deeper. His first coach introduced him to his indigenous roots. Alex didn't even know he had indigenous ancestry until he asked his father about it. It turned out that his grandparents on both sides were of indigenous descent. This discovery gave Alex a sense of identity and pride. He embraced his heritage and believed it gave him strength and purpose. As he got deeper into kickboxing, he felt connected to his ancestors, as if he were part of something bigger. His fighting style was simple but devastating, relying on precision and raw power. His signature weapon was his left hook, a punch that would become legendary. Thousands of miles away, Israel Adesanya was growing up in Lagos, Nigeria. His upbringing was very different from Alex's, but he also faced his own challenges. As a child, Israel was creative and expressive. He loved to dance, watch anime, and draw. His interests made him stand out, and he was often bullied for being different. His family later moved to New Zealand, where Israel continued to feel like an outsider. But Israel found confidence in martial arts. He started training in kickboxing and soon made a name for himself with his flashy, creative style. He was inspired by anime characters and video games. He took the nickname The Last Stylebender from the animated series Avatar, The Last Airbender. He was a showman, both in and out of the ring, and he embraced his role as an entertainer as much as a fighter. Israel's kickboxing career took him all over the world. He fought in China and other parts of Asia, competing against some of the best fighters in the world. But for all his success, there was one opponent he could never get past: Alex Pereira. The first fight between Alex Pereira and Israel Adesanya happened in 2016. Adesanya was already a star in the making. Known for his movement, timing, and precision, he was considered one of the best kickboxers in his weight class. But Pereira was a different kind of opponent. He was calm, methodical, and incredibly powerful. Their first fight was close. Adesanya seemed to be winning on points, using his speed and technique to stay ahead. But Pereira's power was always a threat. In the end, the judges gave the decision to Pereira. It was a controversial call, and many people thought Adesanya had done enough to win. But a loss is a loss. Their rematch took place the following year. This time, Adesanya started strong. He landed clean shots and seemed to have figured Pereira out.
Everything has a purpose. Every decision has a destination. And to this point, everything has gone according to plan.
But in the third round, Pereira landed a devastating left hook. Adesanya was knocked out cold for the first time in his career. The image of Pereira standing over Adesanya became iconic. After that loss, Israel Adesanya decided to leave kickboxing behind and focus on mixed martial arts. He joined the UFC in 2018 and made an immediate impact. His striking was on another level. He moved differently from everyone else in the middleweight division. He was unpredictable, creative, and dangerous. In just over a year, Adesanya became the UFC interim middleweight champion. Later, he unified the belt by defeating Robert Whittaker in front of a record crowd in Australia. Adesanya defended his title multiple times, beating top contenders like Yoel Romero, Pablo Costa, and Marvin Vettori. He became one of the biggest stars in the sport, known for his confident personality, elaborate walkouts, and elite skills. But no matter how successful Adesanya became, he couldn't escape the shadow of Alex Pereira. Fans and media always reminded him of the 2 losses in kickboxing. Pereira was the one opponent who had finished him. Meanwhile, Alex Pereira continued his career in Glory Kickboxing. He became a 2-division world champion, holding titles in both the middleweight and light heavyweight divisions. But Glory was a smaller promotion compared to the UFC. Despite his success, Pereira wasn't making the kind of money or getting the recognition that he deserved. Then, in 2021, Pereira signed with the UFC. It was clear why he was there. The UFC was building toward a showdown between Pereira and Adesanya. But first, Pereira had to prove himself in MMA. Pereira made his UFC debut in November 2021. He won by knockout, landing a flying knee that showed he wasn't just a kickboxer. He quickly climbed the ranks, beating Andreas Michailidis and Bruno Silva. His biggest statement came when he knocked out Sean Strickland in the first round. That win earned him a shot at Adesanya's middleweight title. The third fight between Pereira and Adesanya took place at UFC 281 in Madison Square Garden. It was their first fight in MMA, but their third fight overall. Adesanya was the defending champion and had dominated the middleweight division for years. For most of the fight, Adesanya was winning. He was landing clean shots, using his footwork to avoid Pereira's power. But in the 5th round, Pereira's corner told him he needed a knockout to win. Pereira came out aggressive, cutting off the cage and landing heavy punches. Eventually, he hurt Adesanya against the cage and finished him with a barrage of strikes. Pereira was the new UFC middleweight champion. It was a shocking moment. Pereira had beaten Adesanya again, this time in MMA, and won the most important title in the sport. Adesanya wasn't done. He wanted an immediate rematch, and he got it at UFC 287. This time, Adesanya was more patient. He waited for Pereira to commit and then countered. In the 2nd round, Pereira threw a leg kick and came forward with punches. Adesanya slipped a punch and landed a right hand that knocked Pereira out cold. Adesanya reclaimed the middleweight title and finally got his revenge. After the fight, Adesanya pointed at Pereira's son in the crowd and mimicked falling to the ground, just as Pereira's son had done years earlier when Pereira knocked Adesanya out in kickboxing. It was a controversial moment, but for Adesanya, it was personal. Adesanya declared that the rivalry was over. He had settled the score and would move on. Pereira, on the other hand, decided to move up to the light heavyweight division. In his light heavyweight debut, Pereira faced former champion Jan Blachowicz. It was a close fight, but Pereira won by split decision. That victory earned him a shot at the vacant light heavyweight title against Jiri Prochaska. The fight between Pereira and Prochaska was intense. Pereira stayed calm under pressure and used his striking to control the fight. In the 2nd round, Pereira landed a left hook that dropped Prochaska and followed up with strikes to finish the fight. Pereira became the UFC light heavyweight champion. With that win, Pereira became a two-division UFC champion, adding to his legacy as one of the greatest fighters in combat sports history. The rivalry between Alex Pereira and Israel Adesanya is one of the greatest in MMA history. It's not just about wins and losses. It's about two men from different backgrounds who pushed each other to be better. They'd fought 4 times across 2 sports, with Pereira winning 3 and Adesanya winning 1. Their story is a reminder of how far fighters can go when driven by purpose and personal history. Pereira's journey from the favelas of Brazil to becoming a 2-division UFC champion is inspiring. Adesanya's rise from an outsider in New Zealand to one of the biggest stars in MMA is just as impressive. Both men have cemented their place in history. And even though Adesanya says the rivalry is over, fans know there's always a chance they'll fight again. Until then, their legacy as 2 of the greatest fighters of their generation is secure. The rivalry between Alex Pereira and Israel Adesanya is a story of perseverance, legacy, and determination. From different worlds, they rose to the top through grit and heart, creating one of the greatest rivalries in combat sports history. Who truly won? That's for you to decide. If you enjoyed this story, like, comment, and subscribe to Legends of the Octagon for more epic tales from the fight world. Share this video and join us as we honor the warriors who make history inside the cage.